You have to know your why. You can figure out strategy, you can figure out product, you can figure out team, but if your why is shallow, when those blood, sweat, and tears come, you will quit.
What inspired you to create Pink Stork?
Our mission is to be able to help women all around the world with their bodies and really address the whole self, right? Like it's not just our physical body, it's also our mentality and our spiritual self and our emotional self.
If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring leaders, what would that be?
I think I'd just say again, like you have to be really clear on your why you're doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. Be very clear. Know it in your mind, body, and soul.
Welcome back to the Rockstar Talent podcast. Really excited about this episode. I have Amy Upchurch, founder and CEO of Pink Stork, the wellness brand for women. Pink Stork is a women-owned wellness company on a mission to strengthen, encourage, and inspire women at every stage of life. Pink Stork offers a comprehensive portfolio of premium science-backed supplements addressing the distinct health needs of women across fertility, pregnancy, postpartum recovery, hormone health, perimenopause, menopause, and general wellness. She's overall the 360 wellness brand for women. And most recently, Amy has been recognized as EY Entrepreneur of the Year finalist in Florida. Congratulations on that great recognition, Amy.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So excited to have you here too. The listeners may have not heard about your story and how powerful it is. And sometimes women are told, you can't have babies, you'll never be able to bear a child. And those are items I know you may have heard before. We'd love to hear regarding what inspired you to create Pink Stork.
Yes. Well, I think it's exactly just that. As women, we get told a lot about ourselves and we don't necessarily have to believe it all, right? So for me, I was told growing up that I was not going to be able to have kids, that it was going to be really hard for me to get pregnant. I struggled with like irregular cycles and periods. And, when you're told that at 14, you're not thinking about having a family or having kids. So it kind of went in one ear, out the other. I remember when I was dating my husband, just nonchalantly mentioning to him, like, oh, by the way, I might not be able to have kids. Like it was just what was told to me. So I didn't really think anything of it until I got married. And 2 weeks later, I found out that I'm pregnant because I'm transferring. He's in the military, so I'm transferring to his insurance. And actually, the insurance guy had like got some blood work and my, health stuff, checked in for the military spouses, and he called me up and he's like, oh, by the way, you're pregnant. And I'm like, what? Like, no, that's not me. Like, that's impossible. And anyways, that kind of started my journey of a lot of unknown terrain. I found myself a few weeks later just really struggling in the hospital. I ended up being diagnosed with something called hyperemesis gravidarum, which I explain to people is like morning sickness on steroids. About 1% of women develop hyperemesis and it's brutal. It rocks your body. I lost a lot of weight. I couldn't eat or drink anything. I had feeding tubes, PICC lines, and then at one point I also contracted a blood infection. Its fertility rate is like 80%. And I find myself fighting for not just my life, but my unborn baby's life. And it happened all so fast. I was also overwhelmed. They just moved from Florida to Virginia, where my husband was training and in the military, getting ready for deployment. I just felt like I got hit really hard with life in a short span of time. And needless to say, I had the baby prematurely. My oldest son, John Hamilton, he was completely healthy. It was just like a really big whirlwind for me. We ended up actually then moving a few weeks later around the world to Hawaii, and I find myself again pregnant. So I find myself in kind of a similar position halfway around the world. I didn't know anyone. I was relying on complete strangers because I was again living in the hospital fighting my hyperemesis. And I had this newborn baby at home. I think he was like 3 months old when I was like living in the hospital with my second one. And my husband's deploying to Afghanistan. So I felt like I was just watching a movie of my own like life, and it was spinning out of control. I ended up doing this two more times as well. So I had four kids in 5 years. They were all really strong, like challenging pregnancies. But by my fourth one, I just threw my hands up in the air and I was done. I was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually exhausted, and I didn't understand what God was doing with my life. I was so mad at everything around me. I'm grateful that I had, four beautiful babies to keep up with, but also just exhausted from life. And that's where I really kind of put my foot in the ground and said, I'm going to do things differently. I've
Mhm.
done things like every other way. I've taken every drug. I've lived in and out of the hospital. Like it was not working for me. And this idea, I started working with my mom, who's a nurse, and a group of doctors. And we basically decided to start paying attention to what I was putting in and on my body. It sounds so simple now. I like say it, and I'm just like, how did I miss it before? But you live and you learn, I guess. And anyways, I really started paying attention to the vitamins, to the minerals that I was combating with this pregnancy, with my fourth pregnancy. And I had a completely different experience with this fourth pregnancy. I didn't have to go to the hospital. I
Mhm.
wasn't living in the hospital. I was able to keep up with my younger kids while my husband was gone. I mean, I was still a little green, but in my world, I was thriving. Like this was a 180. And then I got the idea of like, you know, when I was in the hospital for such long periods of time, I was always asking God. I remember laying in bed and just like looking up at the ceiling and outside my window, asking God, like, why is this happening to me? I do not understand, like, why me? Why me? And I was so happy to be able to say that like I got my answer, and it actually had nothing to do with me at all. It had everything to do with other women. And this was to be able to help other women that might be experiencing different struggles or other struggles with their own life and feeling frustrated and looking for answers and not getting the support that they need. So decided to start Pink Stork, and our mission is to be able to help women all around the world with their bodies and really address the whole self, right? Like it's not just our physical body, it's also our mentality and our spiritual self and our emotional self. And excited to say we've been in business now for 10 years and have helped millions of women. And it's just amazing to see, what God can do when you step out on faith and you get stretched beyond your wildest imaginations. But it's so fun, and I am so grateful for everything that I get to do every day.
Well, thank God for Pink Stork. Unfortunately, you had to go through quite a bit, but it made you even that much stronger and to be able to help so many women across the globe. It's really impactful. I hugely admire that.
Well, thank you.
And I know you've probably had quite a few moments where you felt like really excited about the business or in your life. What has been your most rock star moment in your career? And what did you learn from it?
That's a good question. So I like to think like I have a lot of rock star moments, not because I'm great, but to me, like rock star moments are things that in my mind I'm framing them as like things that maybe are done a little differently. And that's what makes it like unique and stand out. And so I think one example that comes to mind for me is actually when we walked away, when I said no, and we walked away from a Whole Foods placement nationally with our Pink Stork line. So we went through a line review with them where you meet with their buyers, they go through your products, and then they decide if they want you or not in their stores. And we got through the first round, like they wanted us in our stores. And after that, you go into a review process of your labels with their teams. And their teams came back and said, you have to take away, it says on our products that this product has been prayed over, and we have a Bible verse on there. No, we didn't have a Bible verse at the time. It just says like this product is prayed over. So they wanted
Mhm.
us to remove that in order to get into their stores. And I said no. Like that to me is the foundation of why this company exists. And so I said no. I shared the story too, publicly, and I got a lot of like overwhelming response that I wasn't expecting. And I think again, rockstar moment being like people align with your values. I was just overwhelmed with the amount of people that supported Pink Stork because of walking away from such a major retailer. And you can't negotiate your values. That's what I
Mm,
really learned. I think it's important to say yes when it matters, but it's even more important to say no when it matters more.
mm. That's a powerful one, especially because they're throwing money at you and
Yeah,
saying, we're going to put you in our stores. But then it seems like you're of the belief that, hey, if they're not the right partner, well, there's going to be someone else that is and understands the values of our company.
100%. Yeah, I don't think you should negotiate your values.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, I know you are also a former athlete and have done very, very well within your athletic background. And it seems like you're a believer in mindset. Maybe let's talk about what mindset do you believe is required for achieving success as a leader?
That's a good question too. I think, yes, so I played tennis growing up. I played in college as well, tennis in college. And it's so funny because I feel like I used my mindset, like my tennis background more in business than I actually understood it for sports, which is great. I would say two things that are really important to me as far as mindset goes is being able to like surrender. Like you
Mm,
have to surrender the fact that you're not going to have all the information that you need in order to make decisions. And on top of that, I think urgency, like moving fast, is so important as well. Especially at least it's been for us at Pink Stork, is like speed has been our advantage as a smaller organization. And so when you can move fast, when you can make decisions and surrender the fact that you're going to have, you know, incomplete information, you're going to have to make, bold decisions that haven't been done before, but still hold yourself to really high extreme standards. That's where success comes to fruition. So I see it every day in how I make decisions and how I lead the organization. And it's something I try to pass down to our leaders and our employees in Pink Stork as well, is that ability to be able to surrender and have urgency all in the same sentence.
yeah, those are hard traits, especially if someone was not a competitive athlete. Maybe they didn't come from a family that valued those traits. Sometimes it could be super difficult for your team to really operate in that manner. How do you feel you are able to kind of motivate them to act with urgency?
So I think the other thing too that's really important is understanding like your why. And I know a lot of people
Mhm.
say that, and it's an answer that maybe a lot of entrepreneurs give, but or
Yes.
founders give. But it's so true because there are going to be mistakes that you made, and there are going to be really tough days where you're frustrated and you want to throw your hands up. But if you understand why you're doing what you're doing, it's
Mhm.
so much bigger than those mistakes that you've made or those hard days, and what carries you through. So I think having a team or an organization that they're not working for you, they're working with you, they're building with you because they're aligned with your why, and
Mhm.
why they're doing it is
Mhm.
what helps carry you through those hard times. They don't define you. They just help
Yes.
refine you.
Yes. Yes. So alignment when someone's coming into the team, do they truly value the mission of the organization, how you're helping women? Do they feel aligned? That helps them act in a manner eh, that you act in or that other team members are.
Right, right. It's
That's
kind of
great.
that foundation.
Hmm. And when building and growing Pink Stork, how do you know? It seems like, of course, alignment. How do you know if you do have the right culture in place? When you're like, okay, everyone's working in unison, everyone's kind of synchronized. When have you felt that at Pink Stork?
I think you have the right culture in place when you have people that carry it, when you're not the one that has to carry it day in and day out. And so when your people are exhibiting those core values that you set out for your organization, ours are change, urgency, entrepreneurial spirit, excellence, energy, and critical thinking. Like when I see people carrying that into meetings, into how they conduct themselves, day in and day out. And I'm not having to, I mean, I'm always going to have to hold people accountable, but I'm not having to direct it. It's just, it's organic within the
Mhm.
organization. I think
Mhm.
that's when you know you have the right culture fit.
Yes, when you're not in all the details and
Hmm.
things are running pretty smoothly, you're not really following up on certain items. And when do you feel like, I know there's been probably quite a few changes at Pink Stork. You're at a great growth period now. When has it been a time where you had to adjust and pivot?
Mm.
And when have you had to make a change to kind of benefit the company as a whole?
Mm, it's a good question. I'm a big fan of like my gut intuition. I really believe women have this intuition. And so I think you'll know when to pivot based off like I'll have this gut feeling. The data
Mhm.
will kind of align with the gut feeling usually, and you can't ignore it. Like it's always there. And so to me, that's like, okay, something needs to change. Something's not happening that we're not doing. And I think it can be really hard. An instance that I think of is say we've hired, and this has happened. So I've hired someone in the past. I hired them for this job, but we grew past what we
Mhm.
hired them for. And
Yes.
my gut was like, listen, they're talented, they fit the role that we essentially built for them, but we outgrew that role. And so having to let someone go that's been like
Mhm.
loyal and has a lot of tenure with the organization, but you've outgrown them and your gut has told you that, and you have to do right by the company and make some hard decisions.
Yes, it could be hard because some people come into the organization at a certain growth stage and it's great for that growth stage, but if they can't develop into the next,
Right.
then it could hold your team back and overall the impact of your team too.
100%.
Can you share a decision that completely transformed your business and how did that help your customers, the women that, are really going through hard times or they just want to kind of optimize their body? How has
Mhm.
it helped them through your decision?
So I'll kind of the way I kind of like to think about this, or the way I think about this question is it was a little organic. It wasn't because I knew what I was doing. It just happened to be again like following that gut intuition. And
Yes.
a lot of brands that start, a lot of companies that start for at least in our space, they want that retail placement. They want to,
Mhm.
chase the sales numbers. And I didn't have any connections with Target or Walmart or Amazon. Like I was starting in a military garage. Like I didn't know who I didn't know. And so I really had to rely on that gut intuition. And to me, what we did was we really set the foundation of our customers were first. So we answered to our customers and not kind of like that retail placement to start.
Mhm.
And that has set us up for such success as far as like building a community of women who trust us because that's what we
Mhm.
did from the very beginning. That's like who we are, expanding our product portfolio. So we started off with just morning sickness, but then our customers kept coming back to us and saying, hey, do you have anything for this issue? Do you have anything for
Mhm.
this? Now I'm struggling with this. And so, again, putting that customer first was a decision that I did not know I needed to make very early on in the business. I just did it kind of trusting that gut intuition instead of chasing all the other things like you would think, like you develop a product, now go and put it on a retail shelf and sell it. We paid attention to our customers.
So you listen to your customers to organically grow Pink Stork in the manner that would be most beneficial to
Service
everyone.
them best. Exactly.
Right, right. It's an easy concept, but it's lost a lot of the times. Like, oh, we know what the customer wants, but have you asked them? Have you heard
Right,
from them?
right. So it's a lot easier if you just listen to them and they'll tell, and they're honest. They'll tell you if something's good or bad or if they want more. I mean, make them the center of everything that you do. And I think the sales follow. I know the
Yes,
sales follow.
yes. And you're doing the right thing. Your mission is to help women and listening to them
Hmm.
is the foundation.
Exactly.
Amazing. Now, I'm sure you've made quite a few decisions, maybe some great, some maybe not so great. What's the biggest mistake do you think that as you've maybe been through successes, maybe a couple of failures, what's the biggest mistake most leaders make when building a winning team?
Ooh, that's good too. Definitely have made a lot of mistakes here. I think one mistake that I thought that I needed to do was like bring in people that had come from larger organizations and
Mm,
companies in the past. And I brought them in and it just didn't work with our company,
mhm,
with our culture. They tried to implement these really big, audacious protocols into a team that was used to thinking like an entrepreneur
yeah.
and outside the box. And so, I think hiring for skill, I knew I needed those skills, but ignoring the alignment piece was a mistake I
Mm,
made.
mm. Yeah, that's a great point. If someone has experience at a very well-known company, it doesn't mean that that's going to translate directly in your growth stage of your company.
Right, right,
And sometimes working for a huge, large organization, they don't have the opportunity to be as entrepreneurial. So
right.
they almost sometimes are missing that piece because there's so much structure
Hmm.
in the organization. And you're
Yes,
like, hey, well, we're just creating. And
right.
I
We are.
think a lot of leaders could probably relate to that one. We've heard it as well at Selective
Hmm.
Insight. Maybe a little bit more controversial here. What's one lie about success that you wish people would stop believing?
I was thinking about this actually the other day in the shower. The shower is where I do a lot of my thinking. I
Yeah.
think it's like quiet and I love the water. But on social, you see all these highlight reels, right? Of it looks like they're doing this and doing that. And I wish people that are building something or,
Mhm.
reaching for a goal would stay off of social media. I really do.
Mhm.
Because I guarantee you, anyone that you think in life that is as successful has had periods where they were under the radar, where they thought they were failing, where they were underfunded, where they were doubted, where they were barely holding on and had a breakthrough. I was just reading a
Yeah.
book yesterday about Michelangelo, and his story is amazing. And so I'm talking like all success in all different areas. So the highlight reel is not the success. Like there's a lot more to that that just happens. And unfortunately, social, I think, just makes it look like this like overnight, so easy thing. And they didn't realize like there was probably a point where this person was barely holding on and wanted to
Yeah.
give
Yes. Yes. And they were at a breaking point. Maybe they almost gave up. And yeah, you're right. People forget that there's a compound effect to all of the efforts
up. Mm-hmm.
that the entrepreneur puts in for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, in the first year or two, 3 years, it's building, finding out what works, what doesn't work, but no
Yeah,
one
I
really
was
kind of explains that.
exactly. I think back to my first few years. I mean, I was a military spouse on a military base, very underfunded. I didn't know what I was doing. My husband was deployed. Like, I did not look like a successful
Mhm.
person, and I was going to be able to create anything of value to this world. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. There's a
Mhm.
lot of sweat, blood, and tears
Mhm.
and pain and failure that goes into creating something successful. And I wish people like glamorized the other side of it, like glamorize the discipline,
Yeah,
glamorize the dedication, glamorize the passion, glamorize the blood, the sweat, the tears that happen, because that was the real work. Sitting here and putting your face on a magazine cover and doing interviews, like that's nothing. That's easy.
that's a really great point. For those that are now building and going through a tough time.
You have to know your why. I think your why
Mhm.
does not, you have to be very clear on your why. Why are you doing this? You can figure out strategy, you can figure out product, you can figure out team. But if your why is shallow, when those blood, sweat, and tears come, you will quit. So really spend some time on your why, write it down, develop that version of yourself in your mind. And when you're tempted to walk away, remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing.
I'm just curious. You definitely went through a few struggles and your why may have come a little bit more organically to you.
Mhm.
Was there anything else that you did that helped you identify your why? Or was it just a lot of thinking and reflecting? Or was it that time that you were just pregnancy after pregnancy having a horrible experience? Was there a moment where you're like, this is my why? Was it in the hospital, like about to die, or was it at a different
Right.
moment?
I think it kind of was a little bit pieces of the puzzle, and I still get
Hmm.
reminded of my why every day. Like, and I'm still tempted to go outside of my why. For example, when a large strategic comes in, wants to acquire you, and I have to ask myself, like, why am I doing what I'm doing every day? Like, it
Hmm.
aligns back to the vision and the why of Pink Stork. And so I think your why, for me, it's gotten sharpened over the years. Like I started to get little pieces of the puzzle, but it's become more clear as I've gone through different, experiences that have really honed in that why. So your why, I don't know, maybe it's not as clear in the beginning.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I feel some just never end up really knowing their why, or
Mm,
they don't spend enough time trying to know their why.
right. Yes.
And it's amazing to see that you've gotten there. And just out of curiosity, I know you've been approached by strategics, private equity, and maybe those partnerships weren't aligned. How do you envision if you were to consider a partnership or a strategic buyer that comes in? What is your vision for how that would look like?
Okay, might sounds really simple, but I feel like I would like see it in my gut. I would feel it in my gut. Like the alignment would be there, right?
Hmm.
I think it's all
Hmm.
about alignment. So it's all about like that right partner, that right
Hmm.
strategic. You have to be aligned.
Hmm.
And
hmm
no matter what, if it's an acquisition, if it's a partnership, if it's an employee, if it's a strategic decision, it's all about alignment. And so I would say the alignment just has to be right, and you know that.
Yes. And so alignment of value. So
Right.
do they even believe in faith?
No,
Do
no, no.
they?
It doesn't have to be like that. I guess
Okay.
more like alignment because I don't ex I think that's one thing where people maybe, for me, my faith is really important and
Yes.
foundational to like how I built Pink Stork
Yes.
and how I built it. But Pink Stork is for everyone. So no matter
Hmm.
what their faith is. So I think it's
Hmm.
more about alignment of like why the company does what it does, to be
Yes.
able to strengthen, inspire, and encourage women, showing God's like love and compassion. So it's really about the why the company exists. Alignment
Yes. Yes. And sometimes they may have seen possibly women in their own family
there.
having went through struggles and the pain that it caused. And they could be aligned because they've already seen it very close to home. And so
Right.
it resonates quickly. That definitely sometimes, like with my family, I know some of my cousins, they were diagnosed with X. Now I get to tell them, well, hey, that doesn't define your future. If
Right.
doctor mentions you can't have kids, that's
Exactly.
not accurate. They're not looking at you as a whole, just like you said.
Right.
So
Right.
if they come in and they have that belief, then that would definitely align, is what it seems like.
Exactly. Yeah, the mindset, the belief.
Yes. Great. Great. And if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring leaders that are listening, that are growing, they're building, they might not be an entrepreneur, what would that be?
I think I'd just say again, like you have to be really clear on your why you're doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. Be
Hmm.
very clear. Know it in your mind, body, and soul.
Yes. Yes, that's very powerful. Very powerful. And again, just to go back to the women, because a lot of women hear many things from their providers, healthcare. What can you say about maybe maybe a product that you've seen women take from Pink Stork such as 41, and I'm not very technical with the terms, but a lot of women don't know that they might have a hormone imbalance that
Mm-hmm.
throws off their cycle, that um, doesn't allow them to maybe have a high success rate of getting pregnant or fertility. How
Right.
important is a product like 41? And sorry that I don't know how to explain it, but I think the women out there and even the husbands, the boyfriends, the family members of women that are struggling, it's really great to raise awareness on how that can help, how that product or other products that you have can help.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Like the first thing is kind of that education layer. So we
Mhm.
go to these experts and they tell us their expert opinion. And great, that's one layer, that's one piece of the puzzle. But I also think it's taking ownership of your own body as well and understanding you're not one dimensional and then educating yourself on what does this look like? Try to, I don't like to I don't want to blame the doctors. The doctors are there and they're doing a great job with,
Mhm.
the way they're taught and what they're learned. But I think being able to ask the right questions to your doctor also helps frame the conversation. And you do that by empowering yourself with information. So learning about ingredients, learning what, get your blood work done and test
Mhm.
your hormone levels. See if
Mhm.
you're low in progesterone. Well, guess what? If you're low in progesterone, you might, struggle with miscarriages. And so, what do
Mhm.
you need to be doing to make sure your progesterone levels stay healthy?
Mhm.
Inositol, the 40, the one that you're talking about, again, women that struggle with hormone imbalance. Well,
Yeah.
educate yourself. What can inositol do for your body to help balance those hormones that then help you be able to, support your body's natural fertility cycle and get pregnant? So I think there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And then being able to educate yourself and ask really good questions to those experts.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, they might not know, like I'm just taking, for example, I have our beef organ supplement, which
Yeah.
is bioavailable. What does that mean? Well, let's educate ourselves. Bioavailable meaning like your body can actually absorb it. You might have a gene mutation that doesn't allow you to absorb fully. Well, you need to know that about yourself. So
Mhm.
go get tested for your, what is it, MRF? I think it's the MRF, gene mutation and
Mhm.
see what your body does. Like everybody
Mhm.
is different and there's no magic pill. And I always say like there's no magic pill. But you can educate yourself and figure out what your body needs to support your goals in life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And all of your products, just because the listeners might not be as aware, I believe they're all organically made or they're all tested, just to give a little bit more context about that.
Yeah, so, again, the highest of all standard, excellence being one of our core values, we want to make sure we're delivering excellent products with really excellent ingredients. So we do go through the highest standard process to make
Mhm.
sure that you are getting, the exact vitamin and minerals that come in your body with the highest formulation, with the best ingredients that your body can take. And there's different sorry, I can get to like the science of all like
Yeah.
your different delivery forms and what's best for you. But, again, educate yourself. What's the best delivery form for your body? What works
Yes.
best for you? Trial and error. Try some out, go get your blood work done. Try
Yes.
some out, go get your blood work done. There's no magic pill. Don't let anyone try to tell you there's a magic pill because there's not. But there
Mhm.
are things you can do to empower yourself and take control of your health. And I hope that you choose Pink Stork to help you do that along the way.
Amazing. And I'm sure the listeners would love to check out your products, maybe learn more about your company. Can you tell them where they can go?
Oh, sure. So you can go to Target, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Amazon, which is my favorite. You can go to our website, pinkstork.com. We're also in like some of your local smaller health food stores too around the country.
Amazing. Amazing. It was such a pleasure to have you, Amy. I
Yes,
hope a
thank you
lot
so
of,
much.
yeah, I hope a lot of women and families out there get to benefit from your products at Pink Stork. We're really looking forward to watching this next growth stage. I know you're expanding globally, a lot of initiatives at your company, and we're really looking forward to watching you grow, continue to grow there.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks, Amy.